matter of fact, it has everything to do with the enemy of Jesus, who wouldn't want to fulfill the prophecy because they wouldn't want to prove that Jesus was who he said he was. So prophecies are being fulfilled by multiple different players. It's not just Jesus that's fulfilling the prophecies. It's everybody that's surrounding anything and everyone in this time period, anyone who's around Jesus. And they are all fulfilling the prophecies that have been spoken that you wouldn't have necessarily known to equate with it. Hey, welcome to Bible 365. I'm Kathy Carter, and I'm bringing you the Bible every day for 1 year. I am reading the Bible using a chronological Bible reading plan, which is available online at oneyearbibleonline.com. You would go onto their website, look for their chronological Bible reading plans, and you can download a free printable reading plan that you would read along with your Bible. You can also purchase one of their Bibles, or you can click on a link every single day and you can do your reading from that link, which again is also free. So today is day 307. It is November 2nd. I was going to say 12th, but that's way ahead. November 2nd, and our reading today is Mark 14:53 through 15:1, Matthew 26:57 through 27:10, Luke 22:54 through 71, and then John 18:25 through 27. So here's where I hit my history. If you have never been here before, I go backwards to go forwards because it's important to know our history. And even thinking today, the kind of the stuff that we're in, if you do not know your history, you are doomed to repeat it. And I watch these people repeating their history all the time throughout the entire Bible. I feel like that's all I've seen is them doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So here we go. If you have been here, fast forward 2 to 2.5 minutes, and hopefully I'll get you there decently on time. So the Lord created the heavens and the earth and every single thing in the universe. He created all the stars, the moon, the sun, every single thing that you can think of. He created those things. He created earth for us, and he created all of the animals, all of the plant life, anything that is on the earth that makes the earth what it is. He created, and he created us, the humans, to be in that earth. He made the earth for us. And when he made us out of dust, he breathed life into us, creating us in his image. And then he made a woman out of the rib of a man. So they are completely interconnected as humans. So she came out of him, and then she creates him, right? So she creates man. So this is constant cycle of how they are interlocked. And they were in community with the Lord in this perfect world that the Lord made for them. And he said, the only thing that you can't do is eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A tempter came in, tempted them, and they did eat from the tree. She ate first. She gave it to him. He ate as well. And in doing that, they severed the relationship between the Lord and the people. And so from that time on, the Lord has been sending people to the earth. Let me rephrase that. The Lord has been using the people on earth in order to draw the people back to the Lord. So it gets really, really, really bad. And then once it's really bad, people start crying out because they know there's a God of the universe. And so they start crying out and begging for him. And then he sends somebody to draw them back to him as a nation. And when they come back, there's healing. And then they start falling away again. They start kind of making themselves their own gods. And they have done this. Honestly, if we go back into the Old Testament, we're going to see that they did this all throughout time. The people that were here on the earth were unable to complete the thing that was started with Adam and Eve because they're human. And so because of that, the Lord made a plan to send his son as a savior in human form on the earth to meet with the people of the earth. And he is both fully man and fully God, because he keeps telling us that he is. And he is there to create that bridge again between people and the Lord. And we're seeing how he's doing that. So what we've seen so far is that he has gone all the way up and down the nation of Israel, and he has healed, he has exorcised, he has taught, he has resurrected. So he's done all of the things to show the whole world that the signs that he is the one that the Lord has promised. And now we're finding ourselves at the end of his ministry. He has told them he's going to go away. And now he has been arrested by the Pharisees. So the Pharisees have gotten together with people from Herod, and they have brought him in and arrested him. That's where we found ourselves yesterday. So it says the high priest, this was yesterday, John 18, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. And then after he did that, he then handed him over. This was Annas. He then handed him over to Caiaphas. So now it says, we start in Mark 14:53, and it says, they took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests, the elders, and the teachers of the law came together. So now anyone and everyone essentially that was against Jesus while he was doing his ministry on earth, they're now all, and these people did not, by the way, all work well with each other. But now in order to get rid of Jesus, they're all working together. And it says, Peter followed him at a distance right into the courtyard of the high priest. We also know John was following him around, obviously not necessarily directly with him, but was also following him around. But Peter, we see, has followed him around. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus, and they could not find any. So nothing credible was really coming through. They really couldn't find any evidence against him. So it says some stood up and then gave false testimony, but they still couldn't really, none of it made enough sense that they could be like, yes, this is the proof that we needed in order to convict him. So, because he said, some stood up, they said, he said that he was going to destroy the temple, but they can't really figure out exactly what he said and what he meant by what he said. He says, and then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, aren't you going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. And I want to give you a reason why. And I'm going to tell you this based not on my own thoughts, not on human nature says, but on what we have read from day one, from Genesis 1. So he says, Jesus remained silent, and it says, again, the high priest says to him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? And his answer is, I am. And then he says, and you will see the Son of Man, which he's referring to himself, sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Up until this point, he had a job to do. Well, this point, he also has a job to do, but it's a different job. Up until this point, he had a job to do. The Pharisees kept asking him about certain things, and he was not fully answering them. He was answering in parables. He was answering them in stories. He was answering them by performing miracles. The whole idea was to draw them to the Lord. It wasn't to ostracize them. He wanted the nation of Israel to know who the Lord was. He was sent as the Savior. He loved these people. God loved these people, and he was sent to draw them in. And he said, if you knew the Father, you would know me. And so they wouldn't even have had to ask. They would have known, especially, again, I know I condemn the Pharisees a lot, but the Pharisees were what we would consider now the Pope and the bishops and the head pastors of giant Protestant churches. These are the people, they studied the law. They studied the Old Testament scriptures. They studied the prophets. They should have known by all the signs that he was performing that this is who he was. So now they've now arrested him, and he is marked, and he said, now my time has come. So he has changed tactics in a way. At first, he was doing it this way to draw everyone to them. Now he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing in order to, we'll see what happens, in order to get the punishment that he's going to get. Because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say he's blaspheming so then they can have the right to kill him. And so when they say, are you Messiah? Are you? So he just doesn't say the Messiah. He says, the Son of the Blessed One. So they're not just asking, are you somebody who saves? But are you the Son of God? And so when he answers, he's essentially saying, I'm God, which would have been heretical. It would have been blaspheming the Lord by saying he's God, because only God is God. And so he's deliberately doing it. He didn't try and protect himself. He didn't try and defend himself. When people kept coming in and giving false testimonies, he never said that's a lie. And they're baffled, like, why wouldn't he be defending himself? That wasn't his purpose. His purpose now is to fulfill the destiny that the Lord created for him. And then he said, the high priest then tears his clothes, which, like, in a way, this is a showing that he's like mourning and he's devastated. So he tears his clothes because, again, Jesus is blaspheming, according to them. And he says, why do we need more witnesses? You've heard it. Like, this is exactly what it is. They all condemned him as worthy of death. Now, this is the Israeli Jewish council, right? These are the people that are in charge of the Jewish people. This is not the law. This is not Rome, right? The people that are in charge of the land, but this is the nation of Israel. So they condemned him. They said, he is now worthy of death. He has blasphemed against our Lord. He's worthy of death. And then some began to spit on him. Then they start torturing him. They're spitting on him. They're making fun of him. They're striking him with his fists. And then I love this idea, what I said earlier, of history doomed to repeat itself. They say, prophesy. And the guards took him and beat him. Who's beating you? Who do you think it is that's hitting you? Prophesy that. Like tell us who it is, which I think is really funny because they did this kind of stuff to the old prophets. They did this stuff to Jeremiah. They did this stuff to Isaiah. They would beat those prophets as well. And so you're just watching history repeat itself with the same people group who have been told by the Lord to remember everything. So this stuff, and I always show you my Bible, this was all written in order for them to not do what they just did. I wrote all this down and I handed it over to you so you would remember, so you wouldn't continue to make these same mistakes that you broken humans keep making. Well, Peter was below in the courtyard, moving on to like our next section. So Jesus is in there getting punished. He's answering questions. And then Peter's outside in the courtyard. So Peter has been gutsy enough in a way to follow, like wants to see what's happening to his Messiah, his teacher, his rabbi. John again went in, and we don't really hear much more of John for a little while, but Peter goes in, and now we see Peter, he's in the courtyard. And we got a taste of this yesterday. So Peter's in the courtyard, and a servant girl comes by, and she sees Peter, and she's like, aren't you with that Nazarene Jesus? And he's like, nope. So right now, and you're thinking to yourself, all the things that Peter has done, the way that Peter has worn his emotions on his sleeve, the promises that Peter has made to the Lord. And she's nobody. It's not like she's the high priest. It's not like she's a guard. She's a servant. And she says, aren't you one of them? And he said, no. So he now he starts like, this is his fall, so to speak, right? Like this is the area in which he turns himself away from the Lord. So he denies it. He says, no, it's not me. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. And then someone else, or in one of the others, it says the servant girl again, says, yeah, this is one of them. You're one of them. You're a Galilean. So they know by looking at him, you're in the wrong area, right? Like they can tell just by looking at him that he's not one of them. Because remember, they're down in Jerusalem. And so they're like, yes, you're Galilean. You're one of those up north. We can tell by looking at you that you're not one of us. You're definitely with this guy because this guy's a Galilean as well. And he swears to them. So he throws down curses and he swears at them. And then he says, I don't know what you're talking about. And then immediately that rooster crows. And when the rooster crows, he remembers the thing that Jesus told him back when they were eating the Last Supper. And Jesus said, before the rooster crows a second time, you're going to deny me 3 times. And so he hears the rooster crow. He remembers what he was told and probably remembers the promise that he made. I will die for you. I will die with you. I would never turn my back on you. And here he is doing all of those things. He's turning his back. He's denying him. And it's heartbreaking to him. You can see that he's devastated. And so he goes out and he's crying. And he says he broke down and wept. Now, early in the morning, so this has been all night. And so now early the next morning, they've been like kind of torturing Jesus and he's been passed down and he's been given question and everything. And then early the next morning, it says all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans to have Jesus executed. So now they're like, okay, we got the stuff that we need. And now we got to figure out how to get him executed. So they bound him and led him away and then handed him over to Pilate, who was the governor. Pilate was the governor of the area. He was not Jewish. So he was a Gentile, which just essentially means he wasn't Jewish, and he was working for Rome. And so we hear, historically, you hear a lot of things about him in the end, and it didn't work out so well for him, but that was long after Jesus died. So they handed him over to Pilate because they weren't going to kind of do the dirty work, so it seems. And so they're like, okay, now we got the evidence against him, and we're going to push him off to somebody that has power in Rome in order to do the thing that we don't want to get our hands dirty and messy doing. Now, this is this last section. So again, all the while that these things are happening, it says when Judas was the one, if you've never been with me, or if you're not Christian and you don't know this story, Judas Iscariot is the one who a few days ago handed him over for 30 shekels of silver. And this was one of the 12 that was living in community with him, and he betrayed him. And so we see at this time now, it says when Judas had betrayed him, when Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver. So it seems from what we're reading, he must not have thought he was going to be condemned to death. So when he sees the level of betrayal that he really committed, he's devastated by it. And when he's devastated by it, what he tries to do is he tries to go back and give the money back. And he says, these are the words, which I think are great. He says, I have sinned because I have betrayed innocent blood. So he, as the one who betrayed Jesus, goes to the people he betrayed him to, and he says, I can't take your money. And again, this was a person who took money on the regular. I can't take your money because I have sinned, which they would have understood. They would have known exactly what a sin was. I have betrayed innocent blood, which means he didn't do any of the things that you guys say that he did. He's innocent of everything. And this is how they respond. The leaders that are in charge of the people of Israel, the ones, and by leaders, again, I want to take this out of the hands so we understand, not the leaders not the government, right? So we live in a nation and mostly in a world where our government and our faith are two separate things. They didn't originally come from that, but they were in this area as well. The government was somebody that they didn't really care about, right? The government was not their people. They were a separate and unique people group that was separate from the government. They trusted and listened to and validated their leaders, their godly spiritual leaders. That's what these people were in charge of, the entire nation of Israel and their relationship with the Lord. And this is what those people said to a man who came to them and said, I have sinned, take back this money, I have shed innocent blood. This is what they say. He says, they said, what's that to us? That's your responsibility. That was their response. If a leader responds to you in this way, when you say, I have sinned, and they say, I don't care, sucks for you, right? Like, that is something to be warned about. That is something to question. We need to, in some ways, be aware of our leaders and the way that they respond to the truth. And so I'm not saying go out and start, beating up your leaders or whatever, but I'm just saying, like, this is something that we need to be aware of. This is what we would call now a gigantic red flag. They should have been like, wow, if this guy is regretting it, we might need to rethink the way that we responded to it. And they don't. They essentially say, oh, well, we don't care. And so it says, then Judas throws the money into the temple and he leaves, because I feel like it gets worse. And then he goes away and hangs himself. So he has guilt and remorse, and he chooses to take his own life. But it says the chief priests picked up the coins and said, so he throws it in the temple, and then they pick up these 30 shekels and they say, it's against the law to put this money in the treasury because it's blood money. They chose for it to be blood money. And then they are like, ew, we can't take this dirty money. It's dirty because of them. They have not cleaned any of that. And they have chosen instead to lay all the blame on Judas, take none of the blame for themselves, and then even refuse to have this money anywhere near them, which was originally the money that they took from the temple in order to pay him. So then they say they decided to use the money to buy a potter's field for a burial for foreigners. So it's so dirty, they won't even have their, oh, listen, we're going to buy this field, and like pretending that they're generous, let foreigners live there. But the truth of the matter is it's dirty money. So they wouldn't have buried any of their people there in the first place. So I feel like they just keep compounding all of their sins on top of each other. It says that's why it's called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. So again, this is a fulfillment of Jeremiah. It says, so I want to note, because I'm gonna say what the verse is, but I want to note here again a little bit of apologetics, right? For anyone who's like, well, Jesus was deliberately fulfilling some of those prophecies. Like, let's just take the donkey prophecy, for example, when it says that he's going to ride in on a colt. He could have very well been like, oh, I know that in Zechariah, check that this is one of the prophecies, so I'm going to get on this donkey and I'm going to ride it down. I mean, let's just be real. He couldn't have said anything about the people's reactions. He couldn't have said anything about the people who were willingly giving up the donkey. But let's just take that out of context. This has nothing, as a matter of fact, it has everything to do with the enemy of Jesus, who wouldn't want to fulfill the prophecy because they wouldn't want to prove that Jesus was who he said he was. So prophecies are being fulfilled by multiple different players. It's not just Jesus that's fulfilling the prophecies. It's everybody that's surrounding anything and everyone in this time period, anyone who's around Jesus. And they are all fulfilling the prophecies that have been spoken that you wouldn't have necessarily known to equate with this. And this is also why when I get to like stories like Revelation, or was it when I was in some of that prophetic stuff in Matthew and Mark, we need to be careful, because these prophecies are fulfilled in a way that we can sometimes, it looks clear now, but it will not at all be clear until we see it coming. So the prophecy by Jeremiah is this. It says, they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. And again, this is from Jeremiah. And that's how we're ending today. So we're ending with a sign, a prophecy that was fulfilled that will continue to build our foundation of understanding that Jesus is the one who was sent by the Lord. So we're going to see what happens tomorrow. So if you guys stuck with me, I hope it was a blessing. I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and meet back here with me tomorrow after you are done reading. Keep reading. See you then.